Hey everybody, Big J, Anderson from Mountain View Farms. Glad to see y'all today. Got Lil on the camera, say hey.
Hi.
Got TB here with me.
Hey.
TB, what are we talking about today?
Well, today we are talking about problem solving.
Thank you.
And I'm going to give you a good example of problem solving that we do every week. We do baking for the farmer's market every week. And to do that, we have to line up all the prices for our ingredients. We have to factor in how much it'll cost, and then we take the cost and go buy the ingredients, and then we make the product, then we take it to the farmer's market to sell. All in all, you've solved the problem, and also you've figured out how much profit you'll get from selling the product. Take it over, Big J.
Okay. Thanks, TB. Now, great example. What are we working through here? We're working through the big five, I'll call them, the 5 major obstacles to building an analytical mind for personal stewardship and professional success. A lot of people, problem solving is definitely a big one. They see something, they see it written out, numbers, letters, it gets all wrapped around the axle, and they panic. If I just simply put up here, okay, I want you to solve 2 plus 2, people are like, oh yeah, I can do it all day long, right? 4, or even something more complicated. But I put up here, 2 apples, and then 2 bananas, I hope I spelled that right. 2 apples and bananas. Now you got words involved, and I said, how many pieces of fruit? You're like, oh man, wait a minute, what's going on here? But you got to be able to do that, because life is word problems, right? All of it's word problems, whether it's baking a cake or building a rocket ship, all of it's word problems. And so you need to be able to work through that. Now I'm going to give you some tips on how to do this. The first thing is I'm going to kind of explain really how word problems, how they go from start to finish. I'm going to use these 2 colors here. And we're going to say this is like a big ball of yarn, and it's got different pieces, and they're of different lengths, but they're all wrapped into each other, right? It's blue and green, okay? Now, if you'll notice, this is disorganized, which is not uncommon, right? You got this big problem, there's stuff all over the place, and you got to bring it all together. You got to figure out, what do I do? How do I deal with this? So what you want to do then, you want to slowly, you want to untangle this thing, right? And I'm going to just draw these 3 blue lines and these 3 green lines. You may have multiple factors, but let's just say something like that, right? Well, at least I've got it broken apart. You want to keep your units together: cups, quarts, inches, feet, miles, seconds, yards, square feet, cubic yards, whatever it is. You're going to keep all that organized, keep it straight, lay it out. Now you can go back and you can break stuff down, so that whenever you're finished, your finished product, you got it organized, then now you got a point to do your actual computations, right? And now you end up with this nice woven tapestry, if you will. And speaking of tapestries, my grandmother, of my dad's side, her name was Lillian. Great seamstress. She produced many products for people, did a lot of custom work. As she got older, she couldn't see very well. She could just by feel and touch, she could still sew at a very high level and produce great products. She had a great analytical mind, very mathematical, a great steward of her savings and such. And when she passed away to be with the Lord, she still had her possessions. I mean, she still did well for herself. So very thankful for that. And this is kind of what I dealt with on a day-to-day basis to help build me an analytical mind from a young age on the farm. Tobacco and peanuts are our major cash crops, and so my father would tell me, hey, you got to get out there, you got to spray all this stuff for bugs or whatever's going on, and deal with it. So I might get stuff that might be pounds to the acre, gallons to the acre, how many gallons per a tank of a 300-gallon tank, a 100-gallon tank, 150. I'm only going to spray half of this on this part of the field and the other part on the next field. And by the way, it's going to rain in tomorrow, so, or the next day, or I got to factor all of this stuff in. How long does it have to be on there before it rains, or it's not going to work? The stuff's expensive, the fuel, time, and so I had to take all of this stuff, big giant crazy ball of yarn, and break it out. Oftentimes I'm doing this mentally, and that's something that I want to pick up on here. We'll get into that a little bit more specific mental stuff when we get into fractions in the next episode, but mental arithmetic. Learn how to do things in your head. Don't always be a slave to that calculator. I would be driving around and running these numbers in my head, or very close to estimations. If I need something specific out 3 or 4 digits, yeah, I'm probably going to bust out a calculator. But a lot of times you can do this in your head. You get confident doing it in your head. You learn to round. You learn to use the rules of 5s and 10s and 2s and 4s and things like that to speed the process up. You get comfortable doing it in your head. I cannot stress that enough. You learn the times tables, and yet I see people, I can say 6 times 8, and they're like, ooh, 6 times 8, was that 46? No. I mean, 50, no, it's 48. Let me pull out my calculator just to make sure 6 times 8, 48. You really don't want to do that. You took the time to learn that stuff, keep that skill up, master it, learn to work things in your head, because it will speed you up, especially as things get more complicated, the math gets higher. You need to use the calculator for some specific things where the decimals go out many, many digits, not just doing the actual computation and bringing everything together. So that's what you want to be able to do. You've got to be able to take that big ball, organize it, and then lay it out. Now, other real life application. I did this many times, I'm sure many of you have. I did this when I was in the field of Space Command and also forensics. Have a problem? Again, got your big ball of yarn, but in this case, the big ball of yarn, it was a report, numbers, it was all over the place, right? Well, so then you've got to take that, you've got to break that stuff down, you've got to see what's going on over here, right? Again, it's all these reports, it's what we need you to do, it's kind of a chaotic situation, break all this stuff down, right? And so then, when it's all over, what do I need to be able to do? I got to put that thing back into an analytical report. Again, that's where the literacy comes in, is critical too. So, that way, I've got all of this stuff and I can write it out. I've got my report. I may throw in a graph in there, whatever needs to be done, so that whoever needs it is going to get a good snapshot in time of what we're up against and how we're going to deal with this. I remember a major project in Space Command. For all my space buddies out there, if you're watching, say hey. We had this thing called open loop control, one of our satellites had a lot of issues, and so there's a lot of training, and I was put in charge of training on this particular spacecraft with a big project that we had coming up for several weeks. And so I had to factor in time, who I was going to train, who were some of the best operators. I need to put them on, each one of them on each of the crews, so that everything's covered and we don't miss anything, that we can deal with contingencies and how you do this and how you do that. And I was pleased. Everything went well for the little piece of the pie that I did, just my little spoke in the whole big wheel of things. And I didn't want to be the spoke that broke, that I didn't do my part right. And so that operation went well. So that was a major example of that problem solving. But it's that analytical mind that had been built from a young age. And that's what I really want you to see. Now, you need to work through these problems. You've got to do tons and tons and tons of word problems. I suggest that you do outside of whatever classroom instruction that you receive, whether it be at home or in a traditional formal classroom, that you spend at least an hour a day, 4 to 5 days a week, working on your math. And at least half of that time in problem solving or more. If you're struggling with it, you need to put in extra time, right? If you play baseball, you play football, you play the piano, anything like that, and your instructor says, you know what, you're a little bit weak on this. If you want to get good at it and you want to make the team, you're going to have to put in the extra effort. It's the same thing when it comes to this. You're going to want, if you want to build that analytical mind, it's going to take work, but it'll carry you the rest of your life. It's going to take extra time and effort. There's no way around it. You're going to have to sacrifice something. If you want to be really good at the violin, you're going to have to give up some other things. You know, we're not omnipresent. We can't be everywhere all the time. We have to break things down to what becomes the top priorities, right? And if you want to be able to do that, you've got to sacrifice something. And the same thing when it comes to building an analytical mind. You don't see the payoff initially, right? But down the road, you'll be very thankful and grateful when it comes to even your personal budgeting, anything like that. So you want to break that stuff down. But I just want to kind of reiterate again here, with problem solving, taking that big ball of yarn, you're breaking everything out. You're systematically extracting everything, all right? You've, depending on what level of math you're at, you've worked hard, you've got the computations down, but now you've got to put that in problems. And you got to work through them again and again and again. There's no substitute for practice. My Hebrew teacher, Dr. Fuller, if you're out there somewhere, say hey. He said there's really no substitute for practice, and that this repetition, that's how you get good at it. Problem solving is the same way. Take something, break it apart, streamline it, put it all back together. And when you do it all the time, especially that one thing that I mentioned before about mental math is critical. You've got to learn how to do things in your head, at least estimate in your head, and then come back down, maybe break out some of the specifics. That will speed you up because then you can factor in other stuff. But you know what? I don't even deal with that because you've already factored it in, right? And also, mental math is so critical because let's say if I'm building a house, and I expect it to be about 2,500 square feet when I'm done with my blueprint. If I run all the numbers and I end up with 100,000 square feet, well, obviously I did something wrong. Mental math tells me that somewhere in the process I must have added a zero, or I subtracted this wrong, or I divided that out, or I squared something when I wasn't supposed to. Mental math, I can't tell you the number of times I'd have students give me an answer that was so crazy. I'm just like, mental math would tell you that this is not even close. Go back and look at it again, right? So anything that you're doing like that, look at it and say, these numbers aren't even close. I must have missed something. Go back to the details, break it down, and take that, extract it, and work it again. Now, in the next episode, we're going to look at fractions. Of course, that's what makes Chip's hair get big, but we've been able to kind of tame it down some over time, especially least common denominator. We're going to deal with some of the initial phases of how to confront that stuff. There's many episodes I want to do when it comes to fractions, but at least we really want to tackle some of the stuff that I think really get you out of the gate, at least. That'll be in our next episode. If you would like some assistance, check me out, AndersonMountainViewFarms.com, or you can use somebody else. I really want you to get some help if you're having trouble with this. A lot of people want to pursue analytical career fields and then don't want to see that happen to you or your child. If you're older, you know what? You can always start afresh. You can always get going. Love to help you out. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'll see you next time.